This is the Polygon Helios A7X road bike, and it's a textbook performance race bike. It's got a carbon fiber frame, a carbon fork, an integrated carbon cockpit, aerodynamic carbon wheels, race geometry, hydraulic disc brakes, and electronic shifting. So what sets this race machine apart from others on the market? It's a fraction of the price. In this video, a close look at the Helios A7X by Polygon Bikes, including the bike's weight, as well as some initial ride impressions from my first couple of outings. So I do realize that a purebred race machine may seem a little bit odd for this channel. We generally talk about gravel bikes, mountain bikes, vintage resto mods, and even electric bikes. Basically anything but dedicated road bikes. But here's a little known fact. I did go through a fairly extended phase from about 2008 to 2015 where I pretty much only rode a dedicated road bike. Fun fact. So the Helios is actually part of a series of 4 models offered by Polygon, a lower tier and sort of a higher tier, each with a mechanical and an electronic shifting option. And so the A7X here is the lower tier model, but it has electronic shifting. Now the frame set is full carbon fiber, with the frame alone weighing a claimed 800 grams. Now as a whole, the bike with no pedals in a size medium weighs just 18.2 pounds, or just under 8.3 kilograms on my scale, which is a touch over the claimed weight of 8.1 kilograms, but not by much. Now the finish on the A7X is this kind of iridescent blue/purple metallic color, and it looks amazing, and it kind of even changes color somewhat in the sunlight. Now the seat post, of course, is also a color-matched carbon post, but what stands out to me at this price point is the BlackTech R8 integrated carbon cockpit. Now I feel like you usually only see a high-end integrated carbon bar like this on elite race bikes, whose prices typically cross the 5-figure threshold. Now the BlackTech bar is really a feat of engineering. It's sleek, it's aerodynamic, and of course the brake lines are internally routed. Now of course there will always be haters of internal cabling, because arguably it makes it harder to service, but love it or hate it, it's definitely a super clean look. Now the wheels are made by the house brand Entity, and they're a legitimate deep section 700C carbon wheel set. They're 50 millimeters deep, and they're fitted with 28 millimeter Schwalbe 1 Addex tubeless ready tires, which is a pretty standard width these days, even for race bikes. Now the rims come pre-taped, and the box includes tubeless valves, so if you do want to convert to tubeless, all you need is a bit of sealant. Now the geometry for the Helios certainly places it firmly in the race bike category, but it's not quite as aggressive as some. For a size large bike, the wheelbase is maybe 5 to 10 millimeters longer than an average bike in this class at 1000 millimeters. And the head tube is slacked out just a tad bit to 72.5 degrees, which may only be a half a degree slacker than most. So very minor discrepancies, but the goal is clearly to improve comfort and stability without sacrificing performance. Now perhaps the reason I was most excited to try this bike out is the electronic shifting. Now, yes, I realize I just put out a couple of videos on Russ's Uno friction shifter, which technologically couldn't be further from electronic indexed shifting. But what can I say? I'm curious, and I've been wanting to try Shimano Di2 for quite some time now. Now the thing that I found particularly interesting is that Shimano Di2, which is the electronic shifting system previously reserved for only the highest tier Dura-Ace and Ultegra levels, has recently trickled its way down to the 105 level, which is widely regarded as the people's group set. Now I'm a little bit conflicted by this, since my gut feeling is that electronic shifting may be new and shiny, but I don't think it's actually necessary. And so bringing electronic shifting to the masses, which by the way is already happening in the MTB world, it just seems like another thing the industry is telling us that we need just to sell us more stuff. So yes, I totally hear both sides of the story, but I figure if I'm actually gonna form an opinion on the matter, I'd better at least use the tech. So in the meantime, until I form an opinion based on actual experience, I can still present the facts. Now this is the Shimano 105 Di2 group set. The drivetrain is an electronically shifted 2x12 system with a single battery housed in the seat post, which means that there are power cables that connect the front and rear derailleur to the battery, but no wires running to the shifters. Now for that reason, some don't consider this to be a true wireless shifting system, but to me, the use of servo motors in lieu of a physical cable pulling the derailleur is what makes this an electronic wireless shift system. Now the bike's all online website says that it comes with an 11 to 36 tooth cassette, but I think that's a typo, as this one came with an 11 to 34, which seems more appropriate for a race bike. Now the 105 cranks feature a compact road double 50-34 chainring set, and the crank arms are size specific, with medium and smaller size frames getting 170mm crank arms, and size large and bigger get 175mm crank arms. Now, the brakes are the R7100 hydraulic disc brakes with a 140mm rotor in the rear and a 160mm rotor up front. And the calipers claim to offer 10% wider pad clearance, which is nice for reducing that dreaded pad rub on rotors that aren't perfectly true. So as a whole, the bike, well, it's pretty amazing. And in mid-2023, this model retails for just under $4,000 US, which I know is a lot. But comparing the specs on this bike to others on the market, well, there's just no other way to say it. It's actually a pretty affordable bike, relatively speaking. Now, I've only got a couple of rides on it so far, but I've now got the fit to where I like it, and I'm getting used to the geometry. Now keep in mind, as far as drop bar bikes go, I've only been riding bikes like the Specialized Diverge over here, and more recently the Ritchie Outback, so there's a little bit of a learning curve when jumping back on a race bike after all these years. Now what struck me right away is that the Helios is not nearly as uncomfortable as I had expected. Now sure, I'm a little bit more stretched out and the stack is significantly lower, but I was surprised at how comfortable I felt on it. Climbing was noticeably more efficient than a typical gravel bike, as expected, and descending wasn't nearly as sketchy as I remember. And I will say that it's definitely a fast bike. Now usually when I hear that a bike is fast, I'm generally kind of skeptical, because fast could mean saving 5 seconds over an hour-long ride. But I have to admit that this bike is quantifiably faster than my other bikes. At the same typical power output, my average speed was up according to Strava, and on a particular segment that I've ridden dozens of times, I managed to set a PR on the Helios on my first ride out, at a perceived effort that I didn't think was necessarily that high. Now my previous PR for this segment was on my old Specialized Roubaix, which was an endurance bike, but I was definitely in better shape back then, and I definitely went hard to get that PR. So it's just one data point so far, but my initial impression of the Helios is that it's pretty freaking fast. And as much as I claim that weight doesn't matter and average speed is a pointless metric, it does kind of feel good to go faster for the same effort. So call me fickle, but that's one of the things that I actually like about cycling. With so many disciplines and philosophies, whether you're a hardcore crit racer or a casual party pacer, it would be a shame, in my opinion at least, to pigeonhole yourself into one mindset when there's so much about cycling to experience. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this one. I am planning a longer term ride review of the bike, so be on the lookout for that in the coming weeks. And I'm also planning a video about my experience with electronic shifting at the 105 level. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.